My sister casually said it at dinner. Your house just fits me so well. Hinting what I had already known. So, I said the market's huge. You can always find another one just like mine. I'm 35. The older kid, the reliable one, the one who shows up with a tool bag and a measuring tape when everyone else just brings opinions. I design schools and small civic buildings. On weekends, I fix things, hinges, fences, roofs that sag in the rain. People call me when there's a leak or when they just want to pick my brain, which is basically free labor with a nicer name. I'm also a dad. Nora is 7. She has my stubborn chin and her mom's honesty. When she laughs, it sounds like someone shaking a jar of marbles. When she's quiet, she's building something, towers out of cereal, boxes, cities out of shoeboxes, entire worlds made from paper and tape. My family knows all this. They also know my sister Ava is the golden child. She's 30, works in event marketing, has the smile of a local news anchor, and the timing of a cat begging at the dinner table. If the world were a living room, she'd be the lamp everyone adjusted the whole room around. I learned early that in our house, help only flowed one way. Whenever Ava needed a backdrop built for a pop-up, a wall repainted, or a clumsy boyfriend's drywall disaster patched before a landlord inspection, guess who showed up with drop cloths? Me. When I needed anything more than a simple proud of you, the room went quiet. 2 years ago, I moved into the carriage house behind my parents' place while I rebuilt my credit after a hospital ordeal involving Nora. It wasn't a handout. I gutted the place, pulled new Romex wiring, leveled the floors, installed proper egress windows, and paid for every material myself. My parents always called it temporary. I noticed the pause every time they said that word, the hook. Finally set during a Sunday dinner in early spring. We were sitting in my parents' kitchen. The table smelled like lemon oil and roast chicken. My mom plated asparagus as though she were auditioning for a cooking show while my dad carved the chicken with his usual lack of precision. Ava casually swirled her wine and asked, "So, you're still in the carriage house?" "Yep," I answered. "Until I close on something. Housing prices are ridiculous." She tilted her head. "It's kind of perfect back there. Like, starter home perfect." I laughed. "Because sometimes that's easier than starting a fight." "For who?" "For me," she replied as though the answer were obvious. "I mean, it's tiny, but it's cute, and I'm turning 31. It's time I own something." My dad kept carving. My mom kept plating. Neither of them looked at me. Nora tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Bug. Can I have the drumstick you don't want?" "Take both," I said, because suddenly I didn't want any dinner at all. Ava shrugged. "It would be good for the family, you know, to finally have me settled." My mom nodded thoughtfully as though testing the idea aloud. It would be nice to see Ava in a place of her own. There was a sound then, not a slam or a shout, just the quiet click inside my head when a detail finally falls into place on a blueprint. You know that sound? The one that tells you, "Oh, so that's what this is." I scraped the chicken skin with the back of my fork and didn't eat it. I looked at my parents. I looked at Ava. I said, "Nothing. Not yet." But that was the first crack. You don't design roofs without learning to notice leaks, and you don't grow up as the overlooked child without recognizing the plan before anyone actually says it out loud. That night, after I tucked Nora into bed and she slid her tablet beneath her pillow like it was a diary, she looked up at me with wide eyes in the dark. "Are we moving?" "We're okay," I said. "Go to sleep." I meant it. At least I thought I did. I had no idea the next chapter was already writing itself. The story didn't begin in a courtroom. It began with a familiar slow drip of small betrayal. "Matt, can you grab coffee after work?" My mom texted one afternoon. I met her at the cafe near my office, still wearing my work boots and a safety vest dusted with drywall powder. She already had a folder waiting on the table. Why do parents always think a folder makes bad news look more professional? We've been talking, she began. Your dad and I think it's time to make things official with the carriage house. The official how? I asked. She took one of those careful little sips before answering. Ava has been saving. I blinked. Saving for a down payment on the little building I'm currently living in, for her first home. My mom replied as though reciting something she'd rehearsed. It's important for young women to build equity. I agree, I said. She should absolutely buy a place. She wants that place. My mom rested her hand calmly on the folder. I drew a slow breath. I'm not a wall hanging. You don't get to move me around like a picture frame. Don't be dramatic, she replied. I'm not being dramatic. I'm an architect. I'm being literal. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were comparable property values, a rough sketch of the property line that looked like a child's treasure map, and what looked suspiciously like a drafted family tenancy agreement with my name quietly erased from the picture. Mom, just read it. The agreement gave me 90 days. It was full of words like gift family, equity, and legacy. It read like a Hallmark card, and an eviction notice had somehow produced a child together. I'm not proud of this, but I laughed. Not cruelly, just that tired disbelieving laugh you let out when someone tells you the structural beam you poured is only decorative. I can't do 90 days, I said. Nora has school, the bus route, and her routine. It would be good for her to learn flexibility, my mom answered. A week later, Ava casually returned to the subject during dinner, settling back into it like a cat finding a warm patch of sunlight. I'll even be the cool aunt next door. I looked at her. You haven't paid rent anywhere since college. She rolled her eyes. That's not the point. She was right. It wasn't the point. The point was the story she wanted everyone to believe, and my parents had already bought into it. Then the paperwork arrived, not in a neat folder over coffee, but by certified mail with a green signature card, the kind you have to sign for like you're accepting custody of a bomb. At the top it read, plaintiffs, my parents' names. Below that, defendant mine. I stood on my tiny front stoop and read those words 3 separate times while the mail carrier pretended to be fascinated by the weather. Nora leaned against my leg. Daddy, why are you making your thinking face? Because grown-ups are being silly, I answered. That's what you call cruelty, when you can't explain it to a first grader. The complaint was dressed up as logic. Trespasser, unlawful detainer, license revoked. It claimed my stay had always been temporary and permissive. That permission had now ended, and that I had refused to leave. Most unbelievable of all, it argued that my continued presence interfered with Ava's reasonable expectation of owning her first home. They actually wrote those words into a legal filing, own her first home, as though a dream required a sheriff to make it happen. I called my dad immediately. You sued me. We didn't sue you, he replied. The lawyer handled the paperwork. So you hired a lawyer to sue me? It's not personal. You literally put my name on the lawsuit. It's just time, he said. Ava needs stability, and Nora needs what I asked. A suitcase. Silence. Then I heard a television somewhere in the background. A canned laugh track filled the gap, somehow managing to choose sides. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did what I've always done. I got practical. That's how my brain survives. I photographed everything. I collected text messages. I printed bank records showing every rent payment, each e-transfer carefully labeled carriage house. I gathered receipts for insulation, heating, repairs, utilities, and building material. I found the email my mom had sent 2 summers earlier thanking me for covering the property taxes on the outbuilding. I wrote down every time I'd repaired their leaking roof, fixed an ice dam, or replace their failing sump. Pump. Not because I wanted ammunition. Because when people rewrite history, paper remembers when I dropped Nora off. At school the next morning she squeezed my hand tightly. We don't have to move. Right? Not if I can help it. She smiled. With absolute certainty. And you can. Help it. I wished I had even half as much confidence as she did. I'm going to try. That evening, I called my ex-wife. Jess. Quick question, I said, trying to sound calm. My parents served me with eviction papers. Served you? Like dinner, nom. Like a lawsuit. She went quiet for several seconds. Do you need me to keep Nora more nights while you figure this out? Maybe, I admitted. But can I ask one thing? If this goes to court, don't bring her unless a judge specifically asks. I don't want her sitting in that room. Of course, Jess said softly. Then, after another pause, I'm sorry. Me, too. The weeks that followed were ugly. Group texts from relatives started lighting up my phone. Family is everything. Ava deserves a chance. It's only fair. Apparently, fairness now meant packing up a little girls' drawings into banker boxes. Because a 30-year-old wanted an Instagram caption about getting the keys to her first home. The paperwork wasn't even the worst part. It was the little things. My mom stopped leaving leftovers at my door. My dad stopped wandering over to check on the boiler. Ava stopped pretending to say, please. Every time she visited, she'd stand in my doorway like a realtor conducting an open house. I could put floating shells here, she mused one afternoon, her eyes scanning the walls like a laser level. Maybe paint this brick. Ava, I said. What? She asked, wearing an innocent expression she'd perfected over the years. This is my home. She smiled, without showing her teeth. For now. At night, when the carriage house settled, and the radiators clicked like they were counting down something inevitable, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, rehearsing calm responses. I knew that if I walked into court angry, I'd become the problem. If I walked in steady, maybe the truth would have a chance to sit beside me. One thing architecture teaches you is how to read structural loads. Some walls carry weight, others are only decoration. I still didn't know which kind my parents were. Then the court date arrived. It always does. The courtroom was much smaller then. Television makes you believe. Beige walls, worn flags, a clock that seemed permanently behind. The judge looked to be in her mid-50s with kind eyes that made it very clear she had no patience for nonsense. The bailiff moved through the room with the rhythm of a metronome. Ava wore a crisp white blazer like she'd just been promoted by a lifestyle magazine. My parents sat shoulder to shoulder gripping the bench as though it were a lifeboat. Jess sat quietly behind me because she's simply a better human being than I deserve. Nora was with her, her tablet tucked inside her backpack, earbuds wrapped neatly around it like a tiny anchor. The clerk called our case number. My parents' attorney stood first. He spoke in polished, expensive sentences. Permissive occupancy, revocation of license, quiet enjoyment, property rights, the daughters first, opportunity at homeownership. He repeated first home so many times it sounded less like a legal argument and more like a sermon. When my turn came, I stood. My mouth felt dry as chalk. But architects present projects to planning boards all the time. We learn how to brief people under pressure. I'm not a squatter, I began. I'm their son. I've paid rent every month. I've paid utilities. I've covered property taxes. On the outbuilding, I remodeled the structure with their permission and at my own expense. I have receipts. I place my folder on the table. Paper has a sound. Truth does, too. They're trying to evict me so my sister can receive the carriage house as her first home. Those are their own words. But this isn't just about possession. It's about a pattern I've spent years paying for and maintaining this building while they've treated it like a prize they could eventually hand to someone else. The judge raised one hand. This isn't small. Claims court for family feelings, she said not unkindly. I need facts. Understood. We went through everything. The photographs, the emails, the text. Message from my mother thanking me for covering the taxes again and promising they'd pay me back, which they never did. My Venmo records, the permits my father had asked me to pull because, according to him, your name gets approvals faster, which wasn't true, but he believed it anyway. Their attorney objected. Irrelevant. The judge shook her head. A pattern of conduct is relevant in equity. Then Ava stood. I'm not the bad guy, she said, her voice polished and sympathetic. I've worked hard. I've been saving. I deserve what every woman deserves, a safe home. I looked at her quietly. You do. It just doesn't have to be mine. She stared at me as though I'd ruined her birthday party. My dad finally spoke up louder than anyone else in the room. He was always supposed to stay there until he got his life together. I looked directly at him. I've had my life together for 10 years. You just never liked the version where I stopped carrying everyone else's weight. Enough, the judge said firmly. I believe I've heard enough. Then something happened that no one expected. A small hand tugged gently on Jess's sleeve. Nora had been sitting quietly, drawing. She whispered something to her mother. Jess softly shook her head. Nora stood anyway. Children have a remarkable way of commanding a room simply by standing up. Every head turned. Your Honor, Nora said in a clear little voice. Can I show you something Daddy doesn't know? The courtroom fell completely silent. The judge's expression softened. And who are you? I'm Nora, she answered. I'm 7. The judge looked toward me. I gave a small nod. You may, she said. Carefully, Nora walked to the front of the courtroom, reached into her backpack, and pulled out her tablet as though it contained the world's biggest secret. It's a video, she explained, from our camera. I learned how to save it. Then she added proudly, it was for show and tell. The bailiff handed the tablet to the judge as carefully as though it were a piece of evidence, which as it turned out it was. Where did this come from? The judge asked. Nora answered honestly. The day Grandma and Ava came over while Daddy was at work. Ava told me not to tell anyone, but I knew I needed to. The judge tapped the screen and the video filled the courtroom. It showed our living room, bathed in afternoon sunlight with the timestamp clearly visible across the top. The front door opened. My mom and Ava walked inside while I was still at work. My mother immediately began sorting through the mail on the counter. Ava headed into the kitchen and casually removed the battery from the carbon monoxide detector with practiced hands. Don't touch that, my mom said in the recording, but it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded rehearsed. Ava smiled. Relax. If the inspector fails he'll have to move out. It'll be faster. My mother didn't object. Instead, she picked up a stack of Nora's drawings from my desk and said, We'll just tell him we thought they were old. Then a tiny voice echoed from upstairs. Hi, Auntie. Nora had spotted them. Ava spun around instantly, but her smile never faltered. Hey, Peanut, she called sweetly. This is our little secret. Don't tell Daddy we were here. It's a surprise. What kind of surprise? Little Nora asked. My mom answered. The kind that's good for the family. The video continued. Ava walked toward the breaker panel and quietly asked, which one controls the heat? My mom hesitated. Not during winter. Ava shrugged. Later then. We'll be smart about it. The audio was crystal clear. Their faces were even clearer. Sitting there in court, I didn't know whether I wanted to thank my daughter or throw up. The judge watched the entire recording without interrupting. When it ended, she handed the tablet back to the bailiff. The The courtroom somehow felt frozen and boiling at the same time. She slowly turned toward my parents. Would either of you like to explain what I've just seen? My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. Finally, she managed. We didn't mean. The judge raised one finger. Here's what we're not going to do, she said calmly. We're not going to pretend this case is about helping a young woman achieve homeownership when I have just watched a coordinated effort to disable safety equipment and manipulate a future inspection in order to manufacture grounds for eviction. Her voice became even quieter. Quiet is always more frightening than shouting. You asked this court to exercise equitable discretion. Equity requires clean hands. What I've just seen demonstrates the exact opposite. My father made one last attempt. He's ungrateful, I answered before the judge. Good. This isn't about gratitude. It isn't even about revenge. It's about finally putting an end to this. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then nodded almost imperceptibly. Petition denied, she said. Dismissed. With prejudice. The words landed like steel. She continued. I'm also entering an order prohibiting the plaintiffs from entering the defendant's residence without his express consent. In addition, this matter will be referred to the appropriate housing authority for review regarding possible interference with required safety devices. Finally, she looked down at Nora. Young lady, you did exactly the right thing. Nora blinked. So, are we moving? A faint smile crossed the judge's face. Not today. Then she looked back at me. Change your locks. Somewhere behind us, one of my relatives made a sound, like a rubber band snapping. The hearing was over. The family drama wasn't. News spreads through families the way smoke travels through drywall. It finds every opening and lingers there. By the time we got home, 3 aunts had already texted nothing but question marks while one uncle sent me an article titled 10 Ways to be Less Selfish. Jess hugged Nora on the porch. You're a hero, she whispered. Nora simply shrugged as though she'd done nothing more remarkable than color inside the lines. Once inside, I sat on the couch and stared at the carbon monoxide detector, still mounted on the wall. Battery intact. I pressed the test button just to hear the alarm scream. My phone immediately lit up with missed calls. First my mom, then my dad, then Ava, then an unfamiliar number that turned out to be my parents' landline because apparently guilt likes backup plans. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I ordered new deadbolts online. I scheduled an electrician, someone other than me, to inspect everything. I also texted a landlord-tenant attorney to ask about sending a formal cease and desist letter. I wanted something in writing that simply said, stop. That night, as I tucked Nora into bed, she climbed into my lap. Did I get you in trouble? She asked quietly. No, I said. You got us out of trouble. She thought about that for a moment. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at me? They're not mad at you, I replied. They're upset because the video told the truth. She nodded thoughtfully. Truth is like seatbelts, she said. Sometimes annoying, but really important. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Exactly. The next morning, my dad showed up on the sidewalk like a storm front. He didn't step onto the porch. The injunction had already arrived. He held his hands out, palms up, like he genuinely couldn't understand how this had happened. You embarrassed us, he said. In a room you shoes? I replied. He ignored that. Your mother is sick over this. She's not sick, I said. She's disappointed. She didn't get what she wanted. He rocked on his heels. We were trying to help your sister. I know, I said. You always are. He looked past me into the living room like he could somehow unsee the tablet. She's the baby, he said, as though that settled everything. Then by her crib, I replied. Stop asking me to be the mattress. He flinched. Maybe it was the words. Maybe it was the truth behind them. I didn't say it to be clever. I said it because it was true. The next week was strangely quiet. No texts asking if I could come fix something, no calls about the fence, no requests to repair a leak. I started to realize how much of my life had been built around everyone else's expectation. Whole Saturdays opened up like empty lots. I took Nora to the lake. We built a bridge out of driftwood. And the last days of summer, I made pancakes badly, and she ate them like they were perfect. I measured her little bedroom and drew plans for a loft bed with steps that doubled as drawers. When she saw the sketch, she gasped like she'd discovered a new color. We built it together, armed with 2 screwdrivers and more enthusiasm than experience. Then the messages changed. My mom texted, "We overreacted. Let's talk." Ava sent a long message about how much pressure she'd been under. My dad wrote, "Family is messy," which is what people usually say right before asking someone else to clean up the mess. I didn't answer. Silence is a boundary that doesn't need exclamation points. Instead, I wrote my own letter, not a legal one, a personal one. 1 page. I printed it and dropped it into their mailbox because I wanted the sound of it landing to matter. Mom, Dad, and Ava. It began. I love you. That hasn't changed. What has changed is your access. You don't get keys anymore. You don't get to set my timeline. You don't get to walk into my home because you've decided it's yours. Nora and I won't be at Sunday dinner for a while. If we ever talk again, it will be in a therapist's office with clear rules. If you're thinking about posting about me, don't. If you're thinking about showing up here, don't. If you're thinking about calling Nora to explain yourselves, don't. This isn't revenge, it's closure. We are not moving. We are not negotiating. We are building our own life. I signed it with my name, not love, just Matt. I expected anger. Instead, I got a pivot. People who are used to you bending don't accept straight lines. They just look for a different angle. Ava posted a picture of a key on Instagram with the caption, "Homeowner vibes," and tagged a condo across town. The comments filled with congratulations. Good for her. 3 days later, my mom called pretending she was checking on my boiler again. You. No, she said. We were only thinking about Nora. Children need a yard. She has one, I replied. It's 20 steps from our door, she sighed. Matt, Mom, I said. Gently stop. She sniffed. Well, if you won't forgive us, I forgive you, I said. I just don't live under you anymore. That earned me a dial tone. My dad followed with a text. We're updating our wills. I turned my phone face down and went back to tracing the pieces for Nora's loft bed onto the plywood. Some conversations are better answered with silence. A week later, I saw Ava at the grocery store. She gave me the diplomatic half smile. We should talk, she said. We are, I replied. You know, I didn't mean to hurt Nora. You told a 7-year-old to keep a secret, I said. You pulled a safety device. You meant to get a result, and you got one. Her face hardened. You always make me the villain. You cast yourself, I said. She stepped closer, then noticed the aisle, a camera, and stepped back. Okay, she muttered. Enjoy your little shack. I looked at the basket in my hand. Milk, eggs, maple syrup, screws. I will, I said. After the groceries, I drove to a locksmith. I handed him my old deadbolts and picked out new ones. We had a situation, I said. He nodded like he heard that every day. Maybe he did. While he cut the keys, he asked, You're the architect who did the library addition, right? Yeah, my daughter loves that reading nook, he said. She says it feels safe. Safe. That word. People think safety is locks, batteries, and codes. It is, but it's also a calm voice, a choice not to answer a call, and a letter that says no. That night, when the new locks clicked into place, The whole carriage house felt different. Not bigger, not fancier, just mine. Nora. Taped a sign to the front door in bubble. Letters home. Underneath in smaller. Writing no secret visits. I didn't ask her to write it. I didn't need to. She was building too. I can name the day. The anger left. Not the dismissal, not. The new locks. Not telling my mom to stop using yard like it settled the argument. 2 months later, a Tuesday, I was laying out a school renovation, chasing winter light across the room, when Jess sent me a picture. Nora was on the bus, gap-toothed, giving a thumbs up. 3 words underneath. She's okay? Dad. Something inside me settled. The part that kept waiting for the next. Email didn't disappear. It just stopped. Driving. People want revenge arcs. This isn't one. It's a wiring diagram. Me. Drawing straight lines. I still see my parents at family gatherings. At a cousin's baby shower. I stayed by the coffee urn. Mom tested a few jokes. I answered what mattered and stepped away when the old pattern started pulling. Again, Dad tried football small talk. We stood in a room with white balloons and a future that no longer needed me to carry it. Ava bought a condo, posted the backsplash, and called herself a girl who can do both after hanging one towel. Hook. Good for her. I don't need credit. And I don't need an invitation. Sundays, Nora and I built things. We made a cedar, bird feeder, and hung it where we could. Watch it from the window. Library. Afterward, safety is a place you choose. Sometimes Mom texts about therapy. I reply with a counselor's name and an appointment date. Sometimes they show up. I say the same sentence because the door keeps drifting open. I love you. You don't get keys. The court order stays in a clear sleeve. Paper is memory. On hard days, I remember the lesson. If the people who raised you will silence your alarms to protect their story, become your own alarm. I told the judge this wasn't about revenge. Still true. It's about Nora. Growing up where promises don't hide. Knives. Where adults don't ask children to keep dangerous secrets. Boundaries aren't memes. They're seatbelts. Closure isn't a slam. It's the click of a deadbolt. The whir of a saw when the cut fits the chunk of a letter in a mailbox. A text that says, she's okay. Dad. Maybe my parents never really get it. Maybe Ava never says sorry without adding a but. What I know is this. When I tuck Nora into bed, she keeps her tablet close because she wants it, not because she's hiding something for an adult. No one tells my kid to keep secrets. We're okay. More than okay. We're home.